So if you're hurting, my brother, and you're listening to this and you're looking at me and say, boy, Brett, if only you knew. Don't say if only I knew. Ask yourself, how much do you know about the pain and suffering you're going through? Are you causing that pain and suffering on yourself? And how much are you willing to do and sacrifice for your peace of mind?
Welcome to the Bronx Health Reach Community Coalition inaugural podcast. I'm Anthony Davis, who will be hosting the podcast. We are continuing our conversation with Brett Scudder, Executive Director of Scudder Intervention Services Foundation Incorporated and the Suicide Institute. Brett, I just want to focus a little bit more on the men's side of suicide, since this is a podcast with Men Let's Talk, and we're talking about minority men, Black, Latino men, other minorities. And I just want you to speak on what would a man or what should a man do if he thinks a man he knows may be suicidal? How should any man approach another one, talk about it?
So let's look at that in two ways. First of all, before you can think about another man or another brother, we call it brother. Let's address each other as brother, right?
Brother.
Before you hear another brother talk about his pain or suffering or wanting to die, you need to think about your own first, right? What are your thoughts around suicidality? What are your thoughts around suicide? What are your thoughts around mental health? What are your thoughts around health? Because if in your head you are judgmental of someone who is, crazy or someone who is suicidal, then you're not going to be effectively helping another brother who is in crisis. Sometimes the words that come out of our mouth isn't the same thing that's in our mind. And so sometimes we can be doing more harm to our brothers than we're doing help. So first things first, let's address us first. If I am feeling overwhelmed, stressed out, depressed, anxious, or just, all these different things that I could be feeling to lead me to be thinking about suicide, I need to first have that self-assessment and ask myself, where and what kind of help do I need, right? Can I be publicly open to tell or go somewhere and say, hey, listen, right now I'm just feeling really depressed. I don't feel a purpose in life. I don't feel like my life is worth living. I'm struggling with A, B, C, and D. I'm suffering with A, B. Let me get the help that I need so that I can get myself to be in a good place, to be in a healthy place, to be in a holistically healthy place, meaning that there's balance between my physical health and my psychological well-being. Those two makes us whole. A lot of us as men right now, we're putting more emphasis on our physical health, but we're not addressing our psychological well-being, right? And so there is an imbalance here. And that imbalance is sometimes what's causing a lot of the physical health issues. Because if you're not mentally okay, my brothers, you're going to be physically not okay as well. Because the mind is the central processing of everything about our body. But we have been told from a very long time, Anthony, that health was always physical. We never really started talking about mental health until over the last 10, 15 years, right? And so now, how do we get our brothers to really realize that your health is a balance of both? And don't wait until you go to the doctor and you hear you're at stage 3 or terminal illness, or the doctor says your blood pressure is so high that if you don't fix whatever, you could have a stroke, or you already had a stroke or heart attack as a result of that. So first, men, my brothers, minority brothers, whatever brothers, we need to start looking at our health in a holistic way first. We need to educate ourselves, learn about mental health, so that whenever I see my brother Anthony is not doing well, and he's saying, Brett, man, listen, right now I will have at least enough knowledge to say to my brother Anthony, my brother, thank you for sharing. Thank you for being honest with me to let me know how you're feeling. What can I do to help? right? What can I do to help? What will be helpful for you? That's not what's happening now, Anthony. What's happening now is when we hear our brothers who are hurting, yo, man, you can't be thinking like that. You don't be a punk, don't be a wuss. You gotta man up. You got all these things that we're talking at each other, but not asking the question of what happened, right? What happened to you, Anthony? Why do you feel that way? When did this start? Listen, let's work on this together. You see the difference? There's a difference when we humanize each other, that we can ask the question of what's happening and how we're hurting, and so rather than be assuming and be judgmental of what we're hearing in our brothers. And so sometimes we're being told by our brothers, yo, let's go have a drink. Let's have a smoke. Let's take this drug. Those are not healthy responses to what we're talking about addressing, right? And so it behooves us as men, and this is why the men's Let's Talk is so important, that when men come together and we can talk as men, we learn what each other is going through, and we can learn from each other how we have addressed what we're feeling, how we've addressed what we've gone through, or addressing still what we're feeling and going through right now. There's a difference between lived experience and living experience. Living experience means that it's still something that we're living every day. So you don't just wake up in the morning and life is good and everything is okay because it's a new day. No, sometimes those pain and those struggles continues. So in the men's Let's Talk, men get to be men. Men get to talk about what impacts men. Men get to talk about the life and realities of men, and hear and learn from each other, grow and grow with each other, and learn how to talk with each other rather than talking at each other. Because that's very important, to learn how to sustain and support us as men, because the support is not out there. It's not.
True, true. With Men Let's Talk, it's a beautiful thing too, because you can actually sit down and have a conversation about how you're feeling without offending anybody. You're just sharing how you feel. And one thing that I've come across before is that sometimes people think that because you're feeling that way, it's an offense to them, or that it's something that's offending them, and it's not. It's just how you feel, and you can't necessarily control it. You're feeling that way. And I think one thing that I want to touch on as well, because we already talked about one brother to another talking and sharing, but from any experiences that you've had, or any people that you have known, or women that you have known, have they ever shared with you how they approached talking to a man that was going through these suicidal thoughts and these depressive moments?
So when I came out about my suicidality, I was at a very dark place, very dark. Oh my God, I was at a very dark place. I was hurting so bad. When I came out about that, 98% of people, Anthony, both professionally and personally, ran in every direction away from me. I was left standing there in that pain by myself. It was, imagine being in pain, and then, something like this happens that add on top of that pain. It's unimaginable. There's something that I talk about in my presentation, and there's this thing called a safety plan. Whenever someone is suicidal and they go into a health or mental health facility or to see a professional, they come up with this thing called a safety plan. Now, the truth is that that safety plan is supposed to be a plan put in place to make sure you're safe. But the one thing that I've learned, even from myself going into these systems, is that the safety plan is not really a safety plan. It's a liability plan. It takes off the liability of wherever you go. Here's what a true safety plan would be. Have you ever gone to the doctor, and they will ask you when they're doing the intake, are you in a safe environment, safe from domestic violence, right? They ask you that when you go into the doctor, when they're doing the assessment. That safety should not only be about domestic violence. That safety should also include, are you mentally comfortable and safe in the environment that you're in? Meaning you don't have people prodding and poking you and just poking the bear and the lion within you and just really driving you mad because of just all the nonsense that goes around. That safety, to me, is the most critical thing that we're not addressing or not talking about.
Brett, thank you so much for this conversation, the in-depth conversation about just all of this. It's amazing to hear. And as someone that has also suffered from depression, um, it's just hopeful listening to you. With all the points that you've made today, what would you say we should keep in mind, or what everyone should keep in mind when they're listening to this?
The one takeaway you need to take from this, for everyone who is listening to this, the one takeaway, the main takeaway from this conversation between me and Brother Anthony here is you don't know how anyone is feeling. You don't know. You don't know because you just can't see it on the outside. You can't tell from the outside. And unfortunately, a lot of times we do that by looking at someone and say, oh, because you look this way and you look awesome, you look great, you're well dressed, you think that says something or it means something, but you don't, right? So this is what it's going to take. We have to have brothers out on the front line, like me and you, right here, right now, on this podcast, who publicly acknowledge our experiences with depression and suicidality and God knows whatever else pain that we've been through, right? That our brothers can look at and say, hey, I saw these two brothers on this podcast, man. They were talking about living with suicidality and depression, and it was a lighthearted, jovial conversation. It wasn't, this is what it's going to take, Anthony. We got to put faces to these words that they can look at someone like them and see a reflection of them in us and say, if Brett and Anthony can be talking about depression and living with depression, that's good for me. I can do that too.
Wow. Yeah. And I hope that everybody that listens to this, it helps them and they feel more informed and more comfortable to talk about what they're going through. I know a lot of it will take a lot of work and it's not as easy as listening to just one podcast, but one podcast can make a difference to at least open your eyes to what's going on around you. And I think that's very important. Thank you so much, Brett, for joining us on this podcast, the Men Let's Talk initiative. Really appreciates you as well. Thank you so much.
Yeah, brother, listen. To my brothers out there who are watching and listening, I'm going to share something with you that it took me a while to come to this realization myself after living with my suicidal mind and waking up every morning and asking God, like, why? I'm tired, God. I'm like, I'm tired. I don't want to be here no more. I'm just tired. I'm exhausted. I wake up every morning. Even this morning, I said the same thing. I'm like, as a matter of fact, this morning I broke down crying and I was in the kitchen. And when my girlfriend came down, she saw me, she just held me and we were just there just for a minute. I was crying and I told her, I said, listen, I'm exhausted. I'm exhausted. I am tired. I am so tired. I'm tired of being in pain. I'm tired of just living in a society that just dehumanizes us men, especially men of color. I'm tired of having to try to prove who I am. I'm tired of trying to make people see my value the way I see value in me. I'm tired of being in these meetings every day in these meetings and you hear people talk about the same thing and nothing being done. I'm just tired of so much, Anthony, to the point where I broke down crying this morning. And again, this is why it's important for us to talk to our partners, right? Because when she came, she didn't be like, what's wrong with you? And, sometimes, our partners can, in our moment of weakness, our partners can really, be like a stake to the heart. But over time being together, I told her, I said, listen, whenever you see me in that state, just know that I'm just in a place. And she came, she held me, and we were just there together. And I was just like so grateful for that. I was so grateful for that. So my brothers, listen, no one knows how you're feeling, what you're feeling, where those emotions are coming from. How do you manage the emotions? Do you manage the emotions? And then it's like whether or not that is real or anything is really up to you to address that. But here is the reality, my brothers. You are in full control of your life. You are. Every decision that you make is a decision that's based off of you and the control of your life. Now, why am I saying that? This is the reason why I'm saying that. If you're willing to kill yourself, if you're willing to die and lose all of these things, whatever they are, you should also be okay with letting go of a lot of things, a lot of people, a lot of people in our lives as men who are just draining the energy out of us, who never pour back into us, never even call to say, hey, brother Anthony, I'm just calling to say, wish you a good day and to positive energy, or you understand what I'm saying, Anthony? So many people are pulling from us. It's like we're drowning, and instead of having somebody pull us up out of the water, we're being pulled down into the water by a lot of these different people in our lives. If you're depressed and your depression comes out of the people that are in your circle or in your life, I don't care even if it's your loved ones or intimate partners, you need to start separating yourself from those people. I am tired of being with brothers who feel like they are obligated to these what's the word I want to use? To these entities that are just keep draining and draining the life out of you. You need to start separating yourself. You are valued. You are worthy of value. That value that you set on yourself is what you set for yourself. So you should not be allowing anyone to devalue you to the point that you feel like you don't belong, you're not appreciated and all that. There are people out there who will love you and care for you in a way that you feel like you belong in this place, in the right space. So my brothers, again, to you, and I learned this over a very extensive period of pain management. If you're willing to die, you're also willing to let go of everyone. Sometimes you have to literally let go and move. I'm not talking about just get up out of the room or get up out of the house. I'm talking about moving from this location to a whole nother location so that you can be in a whole newness, a whole new place, a whole new environment with new people. Sometimes you have to let go of everything to save the one thing that you need. The one thing that I need, Brett Scudder needs, the one thing that Brett Scudder depends on every day is a peace of mind. Nothing else is as important as that. That peace of mind in this space up here, I protect that to all costs. I've had to walk away from a marriage. I've had to walk away from my children. I've had to walk away from jobs. I've had to walk away from opportunities. I've had to walk away from a lot of things because it was not aligning with keeping my mental health or even my sanity. And as I said, I'm a suicide attempt survivor, right? It was only the grace of God why my suicide failed. It was only the grace of God why I'm still here to talk directly with you about this experience that you're going through. So if you're hurting, my brother, and you're listening to this and you're looking at me and say, boy, Brett, if only you knew. Don't say if only I knew. Ask yourself, how much do you know about the pain and suffering you're going through? Are you causing that pain and suffering on yourself? And how much are you willing to do and sacrifice for your peace of mind? Now, if you decide that your peace of mind is worthy of you and you having that, then my brother, don't feel everything in life will come back to you in a better way when you step away from negativity. Everything in life will come back to you. We are drawn by energy and we're drawn to energy. So if you want to relieve yourself of depression, anxiety, loneliness, grief, and sorrows and sadness and all these negative emotions that are just plaguing in your head and just a noise, let's do the transformation. Let's do the transformation. I am here. I'll leave my number, my contact information for anyone who is listening to this and need to talk. I'm going to leave my contact number. I'm going to leave my contact information. I run a 24/7 crisis lifeline. And I know that the hardest struggle that men go through is at night between 11 o'clock and 5 o'clock in the morning. Because that's when us as men, we're up struggling with our emotions. We're up trying to figure out what, on all these different things while the family's sleeping, everybody's sleeping sound, you even leaning down in the bed with the partner next beside you, she's sleeping, she's sound asleep, and you can't even sleep because your head is in chaos.
So, Brett, if you could just let people know how they can contact you with that information right now, that would be amazing.
Yeah, so here we go, everybody. 917-651-1889. 917-651-1889. You can text me or you can call me. That's a number that is available and accessible to anyone, especially my brothers who are struggling, my brothers who feel like they're standing on the ledge, my brothers who feel like no one understands how you're feeling, my brothers who feel like no one is even able to process what you're feeling. No one can help you what you're feeling. You feel like, you don't want to be judged as a man, whatever. That's a number and a resource for you. To my sisters, if you have a man in your life and he's struggling and you need to understand how to help him, you can give us a call too. I can help you with that because I do that every day. All right. If you're a family, you have a man in your family who is struggling, whether addiction or suicidality or just, not taking care of himself, whatever, give us a call. We can help you with that. We do that every day. But don't say that help is not available. Don't say that you don't know, because now you know. And now that you know, you have access to the knowledge, the people with the specialization, and the resources to help you and your family and loved ones to come out of this dark space and to really start living their lives. All right. So now you know, and you have that information. You can also go to our website. It's SISFI.org. S is in Scudder, I is in intervention, S is in services, F is in foundation, I is in inc.org. And you'll see a lot of the work that we do. We've been doing this work for a very long time, right? And so now that there's this whole thing around mental health and everybody's, mental health, I'm taking a step back. I can now finally breathe because I'm not the only one now who's talking about it. The whole country is talking about it, right? So I can finally take a step back after 20 years and just be like, oh my God, thank you, I can breathe. But yes, there is still a lot of work to be done around suicide and suicidality. So from the Institute of Family Health, I want to say thank you for, being one of those organizations that's not afraid to address this topic and not afraid to put the attention on it that it needs to, and continue doing the work that you're doing around Men's Let's Talk. And, we want to see that Men's Let's Talk going from once a month to multiple times a month because, we're out here struggling as men, but every resource or everything that happens, the little that it offers helps someone. And that's a beautiful thing that can be had. So I want to say again, thank you to the Institute for Family Health for what you guys are doing, to the Bronx Health Reach to continue to be, that voice for the people of the Bronx as we're going through. And let me also say this, Anthony. I just realized when we had talked earlier that I never mentioned this, but of all 5 boroughs in the city, the Bronx is where we've had the highest rates of suicide and suicidality in the Bronx. And I think that is attributed because that's where I do most of my work, because I live in the Bronx. But also, when I look at the other boroughs, the Bronx has it's a very weird dynamic of how the Bronx is in terms of population, the 1.4 million people, and how the Bronx, the diversity of the Bronx. But the one thing I also know, not only is this the borough with the highest number, it's also one of the most active for a whole lot of other social issues. We talk about health disparities, right? The Not 62 campaign. I've been with that campaign for years. But I think when we talk about the Not 62 campaign, we need to make the Not 62 campaign be a more integrated effort across the board. Some people hear Not 62, they don't know what Not 62 is. The Bronx Health Reach leading that effort as well. But we really need to start seeing some poster boards, right? Billboards and, on all the news channels, something that addresses and talks about the Bronx and the health disparities of the Bronx, because even the people in the Bronx don't even realize that they're dealing with health the way that they are. So there's a lot of work to be done, but also a lot of work has been done by the Institute of Health and the Bronx Health Reach. So we just have to continue beating the drum.
You've been listening to the Bronx Health Reach podcast with your host, Anthony Davis. You can email Bronx Health Reach at bxhealthreach@gmail.com. You could find Bronx Health Reach on social media. For Facebook, Bronx Health Reach. For X and Instagram, BX Health Reach. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed and presented by our guests here on the Bronx Health Reach podcast are their own and do not necessarily represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of Bronx Health Reach and the Institute for Family Health.